going with a left turn to what we normally talk about. Talking about an important topic. I know, we've all been going through this coronavirus thing, this pandemic over the last 6 months, and there have been a lot of challenges and issues along the way. But one of the things that I think doesn't get addressed enough, and I know we have seen it in our own circles, is the increase in suicides, whether it's people being locked down, people not having the same social connections that they're used to. I'm not sure all of the reasons behind it, but it's definitely a thing. And we thought that we have a friend who we wanted to bring on tonight to talk about it because we thought she has a really unique angle that I think is a pretty good bridge to talk about this with what we normally talk about. And rest assured, we have some other fun things planned for later in the show. We definitely want this to be a midweek shot in the arm of encouragement for people, as I know that it is. And so hopefully this also will be a useful conversation that will bring some hope to people.
Yesterday, we worked with a client in Iowa and we introduced adultitis to them for the first time. And it was one of those things where you're like, it was a healthcare client that we joke about. You might not even know about adultitis, but it is one of those things where there's a range of severity when we talk about adultitis. And tonight, when we're talking about mental health, this is not outside of our topic, you guys. This is within it, unfortunately. So yes. It is one of those things that I think is very important, and we're honored to have our guest here tonight.
Yeah, so let me introduce her. So we have Margarita Gurri, PhD, CSP, also known as Dr. Red Shoe. She's a global speaker, consulting psychologist, and sassy grandmother. An expert in misbehavior. It's part of the reason we like. She's a shenanigator. Business leaders and government teams count on Dr. Red Shoe's wisdom and humor when it matters most. And boy, does it matter now more than ever. So, Margarita, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome.
Well, thank you. It's big fun to be here. Thanks for asking me.
So we got to start on a lighthearted note here. Dr. Red Shoe, I have a thing for red shoes. You have a thing for red shoes. Tell us, where did your thing for red shoes come from? It's a great story. I want people to hear it.
So the red shoes came from when we escaped Castro's Cuba in 1960. We were allowed to bring $5 per person and one suitcase for the whole family. And there were four Gurri kids. My father had gone a few days before when he still could. And so my mother then was coming with us, and she was annoyed. And so it was to Castro, she was going to leave her way. And anyone who's packed for a trip knows that red shoes aren't necessarily the most practical choice if you're going to go somewhere and that's all you got. Right. But she was going to do it her way. And I love that. So when my mother was dying many years ago as an old lady, I started wearing red shoes to tease her and honor her. And my audiences started to notice. But my mother said, "Mijita, why are you wearing red shoes?" And I said, "Mama, because you wore them when we left Castro." And she said, "I know, ni jamás. They were not red. They were cordovan brown." But in my 4-year-old mind, they were cherry red, and it's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Oh, there you go.
I love that. So that's where the Dr. Red Shoes. So I started honoring my parents and their beautiful spirit. They have spirit like yours. And so they started calling me Dr. Red Shoes. So that's where that comes from.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, how many, I was looking around, how many pair do you have? I thought I saw 37, but I feel like that's probably too small for.
I believe it's 37. And that includes hiking shoes, my water shoes for kayaking, shoes I wear for funerals and weddings. I only have one pair of shoes that's taupe, that's almost skin colored for my daughter's wedding because I figured no branding at that.
Oh, there you go.
But everything else, my flip-flops are in Spanish, chancletas, my snow boots, everything's red. You know what? It's made my life easy because everything goes with red in a way. Nothing goes with it and everything goes with it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And you're bringing the whimsy every day, which we appreciate, don't we?
Yeah.
And it's so much fun, especially if there's polka dots,
Yeah. Well, okay. So we had a conversation a few weeks ago now, I think, and you happened to tell me, I know that you do a lot of work with the military, and you were talking about how heartbroken you were because of suicide being a big issue in the military and people that are coming home. And obviously, with this coronavirus thing, that's also been an issue for a lot of people. And so I thought you would be a really good person to bring on to shed some light on this issue and to maybe give people some hope, both for people who maybe know someone in their life who they wonder, like, maybe they're struggling with suicidal thoughts and what should I do and how can I tell, but also anyone who might be watching either now live or in the replay that's like maybe feels like they're in kind of a bad spot. And I don't even know where to begin. So what makes sense for you? Like, where should we start with something like this?
All right. Well, let's talk about why we don't kill ourselves. Every day we wake up and we say, I'm here today. And we look around and we have reasons for that. We tell ourselves a story. Why am I here? And hopefully we decide to stay on this earth because we have meaning. We have close relationships. We have a reason to go on. We have something we're looking forward to. We have something that we have to fix or something that we're avoiding. Even avoiding something can be delicious, right? There's nothing better than free time from procrastination. I ignored that. So why do we choose to live? Many years ago, when I first became a psychologist, I was working with this girl who was schizophrenic. She was 6 years old, and she was in a hospital just because her mother was schizophrenic. And she was kind of like in a halfway house for kids. She had no place to go. And she told me that she was dying of cancer. And she said, I'm here because the grown-ups don't know what to do with me. And I had to laugh. And she was right. They didn't. And she said, everyone looks at me like, oh. And what they forget is that God doesn't care if I'm alive or dead. I'm still going to be with him. I'm here for a short period of time. I hate to think that this ugly room that I'm living in is life. Let's see what heaven has to bring. And everyone's sad. And she also said people think that they deserve life or they deserve death. She said grown-ups have it all wrong. I said, well, we do. So help this grown-up. And she said, she called me Dr. Margarita. I think that we're on this earth to see what good we can do. And I think that maybe by dying an interesting or tragic life, maybe by being joyful in the face of my unhappiness, and she's only 6 years old, right? Maybe I can help give a lot of people purpose. She said, look at that nurse. She's beautiful, but she's miserable because she's picked a yucky guy, and that makes her unhappy. Does she know she doesn't have to be with the yucky guy? And so with the eyes of a child, she says, I think we can pick. And so from that, I got the idea that maybe we take life as we see it from the story we create. And Kotecki Indians had that idea that we're born knowing everything. And over time, with the other people's expectations and stories, we lose that sense of wonder, this sense of noticing what really is. And our story ekes into it. Maybe we think we're supposed to be taller or lighter or darker or with freckles or not. I remember as a kid, my new best friend in America had freckles. So I put freckles all over my face. Unfortunately, they were orange. It was an orange magic marker. And they were really big dots, and my fascination with polka dots has continued. And so the idea is, do you need fake freckles to be happy? Well, they make me happy at the moment. But I'm okay with not being a freckled person, but I have 2 daughters with freckles. God is good and the universe is good, right?
That's funny.
The whole idea is, what is it that brings you delight and wonder? What keeps you alive? So now let's talk about suicide. There are times in everyone's life where we think about, is this the day that I'm going to die? Maybe it's because it's a car accident that's about to happen. And the idea of being happy that we might die, is that suicide? No. But we test the what is by looking at what isn't, correct?
Yep.
The knowing and not knowing, the dark side and light side of the moon. if I'm unhappy with myself, it's pretty natural to think, well, what are my choices? Well, obviously, not living is a choice. So a lot of times we don't want to be alive because we're in pain. We don't see hope. We don't see a way out. That doesn't necessarily mean we're suicidal. But if we've had trauma, or we're teenagers, or we're drunk, or we don't have enough connections, or we're veterans, or first responders, or people who have seen trauma, and we don't come back to enough of a supportive environment, or people who understand, or we're drinking and we have guns around, we may lose the opportunity to reconnect with wonder. So what I love about what you guys are doing is I think wonder is one of the antidotes to anxiety, depression, because what wonder does is invites us to stimulate our brain. Our brains love new things. They love surprises. And what is wonder but a surprise, right?
Yep.
So if we're thinking about suicide, I came up with something corny. Are you ready for something corny?
Let's go. Yes.
I figured you would. All right. So I was talking to somebody and I wasn't making any sense and I wasn't connecting. And finally I said, let's look at this. It's like Vanna White. Kim, we were talking about you and your Vanna White dress or whatever. It's like Vanna White that maybe you bought an extra vowel that you don't need, the letter U. So if you put you in wonder, then you have wounder. So are you a wounder of yourself and others? So let's talk about you. If we take ourselves too seriously, we lose the sense of wonder. Ego is one of the things that if we're too focused on ourselves, we miss what's all around us. We're interpreting everything through the screen of our past stories. And our past stories can be very positive and maybe falsely so. Or maybe they can be very negative and scary. Maybe truly they were. But what stories are we carrying around with us? So if we take out the you and focus on what is all around us. So I created something called dun da da dun, and everyone go dun da da dun,
Dun, dun, dun.
da-dun. Okay, so I was a psychologist in private practice for I think about 40 years now. Boy, the time has passed. And gravity and I are one. So I'm looking at this couch, and if you look at it, there's 3 cushions, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's say here, the one that you're looking at, the one that's all the way to the right is, let's say, the cushion 3. That's 20% of the population. They're totally asleep. They're not aware of themselves, others, or the context in which they find themselves. They're in their own story, drugs and alcohol, narcissism, a good grudge can keep you in cushion 3. There are lots of things that keep us from wonder or from noticing what is. Then there's the main cushion that I like, cushion 1. Dun da da dun.
Dun 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 dun.
If you expect stuff and you wait, good things happen, but you have to set the tone. So people forget, if you're in cushion 1, you know you can set the tone, but you have to wait for it.
Mm-hmm.
If you step on your own line, you don't get it, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to know how to set the tone, how to excitement. So cushion 1 is 5 to 10%. And this is a very well-tested theory, and it's perfect because I created it, right? So it can't be wrong. So cushion 1 are the people fully aware. They're aware of themselves. They know their superpowers, which are their skill sets and gifts, but their superpowers also the things you really are horrible at. So during my confirmation, my favorite priest, Father Juan Sosa, I know I'm Catholic. Yes, and I'm still Catholic. I know. And there's still wonder in it for me. So if, he was saying that God gives you blessings to do his work, but it's through those challenges that he gives you that he helps you figure out your path. Because when we have something that stops us or challenges us, we grow, right? Mm-hmm. So cushion 1, we're aware of ourselves, other people, we see them as they are, and the context in which we find ourselves. And then there's the middle one, which is half awake, half asleep, where most of us are. We have a good time. We have noisy parties. We fix motorcycles. We do all sorts of stuff, right? We go to tailgating party. There's nothing wrong with that. But this is real discernment. And it's a pain in the neck because with real discernment, you can't deny pain. And you can't deny that you're a pain in the neck sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. We're all that difficult person from time to time. And then there's the 2 cracks. When we first started, one of my patients called it the fart crack because they watched the labyrinth and the bog of eternal stench smells good, right? And then I thought, I can't go around saying fart all the time. So my granddaughter, I asked her after like a year or two, I think, what can I say? She said, Lela. So in Spanish, abuela is grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
She calls me Lela. Lela, they're the change cracks because that's where the change falls and that's where you can make change as well. Isn't that clever? Out of the mouth of babes, correct?
That's awesome.
So we have the two. So 2.5% of this cushion 3 goes in the crack, 2.5% here, 2.5% to the cushion 1, 2.5% in between. Now, there's only 3 times in a life that we're really open to change. And that's when we're in the 2 cracks because we feel anxious and upset. So don't throw away a good anxiety. We'll get back to it. It's a gift. So we have anxiety, depression, we're uncomfortable, we have dis-ease, we're not at ease, right? Mm-hmm. It helps us notice something's wrong. And then also cushion 1. So cushion 1, the sentient beings, they change for the sake of change. You guys are that. You're creating joy and wonder in a culture of hope and funniness, right? And I think you're connecting to everyone's wish that the world can be a better, shinier place, and it can be. That doesn't mean that yucky things don't happen. Mm-hmm. So if you have this couch, and everyone does, we can choose where we are. And the couch citizenship is not permanent. Mm-hmm. So I can be here high and mighty and get all high and mighty and I slip to the crack. If I stay in the crack too long, I have to either slither down or spring forward. There's only 2 choices. You cannot hide in the crack forever because it's not truly a choice. It's like purgatory. Mm-hmm. Temporary, right? So my whole thing about suicide is when we're talking to veterans. So every day, depending on the statistic you look at, 21 or 22 veterans kill themselves by suicide every day. Now, I don't know how they do the statistics, how much of that is unsafe motorcycle driving without a helmet, alcoholism, bad food choices because we're drowning ourselves. I don't know how they make all those statistics. I'm not privy to that. But even 1 is a lot, but 22 a day, really? Not just veterans. How about active duty? How about guard and reserve? How about their spouses or their life partners? How about the chaplains who are the ones that take care of them all the time? How about the neighbor or the employer who isn't with it? So we have this suicidal thing happening, and I believe it's a call to action. If we know someone in our lives who's sad, depressed, anxious, what they really need is love. They need connection. They need meaningful connection. They need to be reminded why we love them and that they are lovable. Teenagers are difficult because they have a fast time clock. You know how Hermione had that time thing? Mm-hmm. They change. Yeah. That's like teenagers. Mm-hmm. So they go from happy to unhappy, sometimes seamlessly, quickly, but they're not really. It just seems that way. They can be very impulsive. Their brains aren't developed all the way. And our brains don't really develop till our early 20s. And so our frontal lobe is not there to help us. Oh, that's a permanent decision. Don't do that. Mm-hmm. It is very sad when someone's thinking about suicide, but it's not so sad if they can use that as the springboard to get to a different cushion, the springboard to wonder. Be there for them. Don't leave them alone. Help them. And still, I want to say for anyone who's had someone in their life kill themselves, sometimes there's nothing we can do. Sometimes it comes out of left field, and it's very sad. I mean, I don't think we have to blame ourselves. Now, if we contributed to it by not noticing, I mean, who has the crystal ball? Who really can predict, right? Because some of the people always say he was the happiest person. I can't believe he did that. We don't know what he was thinking. We don't know if he was drinking and had a gun nearby. Those are 2 predictors. Mm-hmm. If you're feeling very hopeless and you've been drinking and have a gun, it's a huge predictor. If you've had a recent trauma, anyone with a childhood trauma is much more vulnerable because their resilience is not always honed. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it isn't. So there's lots of reasons why people kill themselves. If someone, though, says, I'm thinking about killing myself, I always take it seriously. Make sure that you escort them. Ask them, what are your thoughts? What's your plan? What would you do? What would happen tomorrow? How would that impact everyone? I mean, 6 or 7 people are devastated in your inner circle every time you commit suicide, and communities can be devastated.
Mhm.
If we come back from war and we have a wonderful community or tribe of people who support us, things like suicidal thoughts and PTSD can be more short term. It's okay to have trauma. The goal is to move trauma from a long term possibility to just keep it short term. Bada bing, bada boom, you treat it. And there are people who are amazingly skilled at working with wounded and traumatized individuals. Hospitals sometimes need it. There are other solutions. There's all sorts of stuff. But the main issue is don't be afraid to ask, are you thinking about killing yourself? Right? 1, 2, 3, ask out loud. Are you thinking about killing yourself? Oh, it's hard to ask, isn't it? Let's try
It
again.
is.
Are you
It is.
thinking about killing yourself?
Thinking
Thinking
about
about
killing
That's
yourself.
a
Oh,
very
right. Was that so
good
hard? Yes, it
question.
is.
Mhm.
Because we're afraid that if we say it, we're going to put the idea in their heads. We don't.
Right.
And then you could say, okay, well, what's that about?
Mhm.
What would happen? What's your plan? What would happen if you did? What would happen if you didn't? In many Native cultures, if someone almost dies, either by their own hand or some accident, and they come back, they're said to have a new life, a do over.
Mm.
So maybe a suicidal thought is also an invitation to a do over.
Hmm.
Maybe you can get rid of your old story and kill it, but keep the best parts of you,
Oh, that's
Like
beautiful.
that.
right? So, what do you want to kill off? Do you want to kill your whole self or the parts of you that no one wants to live with?
Hmm.
So, I think that, a little death can mean orgasm. So, why not make it the ecstasy of life, right?
Mhm.
So, I think that if we look at things carefully, and sometimes a sad thought can be a gift, sometimes a suicidal meandering in the mind can be very awakening. All right. So now, you remember Pandora and her box?
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think it might not have looked quite like this. I
I
think it
love
might
that
have
box.
looked more serious.
I love that
It's
box.
definitely an attractive box.
I love it. It's my precious, my
Mhm.
precious. Okay. So whether we're suicidal or COVID cranky or anxious or depressed or whatever, one of the antidotes is a sense of excitement and wonder.
Mhm.
So I'm going to say, here's a box. What's in it? And then you have to ask. Now, here's a box. What's in it? Here's for you. How we do things. It's about anticipation,
Mhm.
right? Like Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's one of my favorites. Okay. So the whole idea is, how do you surround yourself with people? Who's in your life? Like that 6-year-old. Why is that person with that yucky person? Take a look at your life. Do you have people who would give you a goofy box? Or are there people you could share a goofy box with? This is my virtual gift. It saved me so much money during COVID
Hmm.
because it's a redo. I mean, it's perfect. So do you want to know what's in it?
Of course.
Oh yes.
So let's say Pandora's box, we know with a Greek myth that it was opened and everything, all the yummy things in life left except for one thing. And what was left was hope. In this case, what I have is the happiness fairy. She's silly, she's goofy. I've had her for years. Look at her; her wings are even curled. But since I'm a grandma, I think my wings are curled too, and that's okay. She's not so fresh or so new, and she and I are both one with gravity. But she's just totally adorable, right?
She's adorable.
What I tell people is everyone has access to their own happiness fairy, and it sits on your shoulder. If you decide to put the you in wonder and you let yourself be wounded, the wrong cheeks face out. And she's mooning you and everyone else. It's a silly thing, I know. I wax silly. But the whole idea of what is it that you're carrying with you? We all have little wagons, and I have this little red wagon on my shelf that I can carry. And so what's in that wagon? And if you can only fit certain things, what do you bring in it? Sense of joy, sense of gratitude. If someone can't access their happiness, chances are they have forgotten gratitude.
Mm.
Chances are they have forgotten to be grateful for who they are and even for their depression. There was a woman I know, I did therapy with her many, many years ago. She was a police officer's wife. And she came to my office saying she's very anxious. She wanted to be less anxious. So as I started the first interview, I got some idea of why she was anxious. And it was all about her not being okay. But as I probed, I found out that one of her main sources of anxiety, her husband is very depressed, very angry, suicidal, and he sleeps with a loaded gun under his pillow in the bed they share.
Mm.
What I submit to you is she should have been more anxious. So I said, I'm not going to help you be less anxious. I think you need to be more anxious. Anxiety is her gift. If you feel bad about yourself, why do you feel bad? Are you doing something bad? Do you need to apologize? Do you need to be grateful for something? What do you need to fix? And if you don't need to fix something, then maybe it's an idea that a relative put in your head, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I once had a teacher told me that because I was Cuban and not American, that I should not take my share of happiness in the world because I was taking it for the good Americans that deserved it.
Oh my goodness.
Well, even then, I knew she was wrong, and I thought, "Pobrecita." I mean, but luckily, I had this attitude about life already. I mean, I think 5 years old when she said that to me, that I didn't deserve it. I was taking it away from the good Americans.
Wow.
We can get bitter or we can get better. I got that from Kelly Swanson. I'm talking to her about storytelling.
Love Kelly.
I'm writing a book about the bitter and better fairies. So the whole idea is you can get bitter or you can get better. If I'm all full of you with a wounder, right? I'm going to think it's not fair. She shouldn't have said that to me. It's not right. Or I could think about her. Like when I was little and came to this country, I got beat up from time to time for being Cuban. And I'd come home a little bloody and I'd be crying and my mother would give me a hug and kiss and my father too. And my mother used to say, that's Jesus that hit you. I would say, well, Jesus has a great right book. Her whole point was show them who you are. If Jesus gives you water from the well, if Jesus gives you a black eye, and it's just a metaphor, really.
Right.
I mean, I'm not suggesting that we hit people. I don't think violence is a good thing.
Right.
The only violence I do is I kill chocolate regularly. I mean, I think it deserves a beautiful sweet death. Okay. So if you think about, how you respond, I mean, what are the grudges? Okay. Everyone think about a grudge in their head. Something that you hate that someone did and you're mad at them. You didn't deserve it. It wasn't fair. All right. Now thank them in your mind. Thank you for being such a big fat jerk that you helped me notice how wonderful I am. Thank you for noticing that I have too much you in my wonder and I'm edging away from wonder to wonder. Thank you for helping remember that I'm being ungracious. Not everyone can be kind in every moment. Is it your turn to be kind or not? So that person maybe doesn't love themselves as much. Who wounds someone else on purpose? Some people do. Some people are toxic and they are emotional vampires and they need to hurt other people to feel good about themselves. But most people just do it as an accident. They don't mean to be jerks, but they are. And you take a turn. I mean, look to your right, look to your left. If no one's being a jerk, it's your turn, right? We all take. And so the issue is whether we're doing it on purpose or not, we can't take ourselves too seriously.
Right.
So how do you get over it? So if someone tells you something bad about yourself and makes a narrative that isn't true, you can't convince them it's not true. Sometimes we just don't talk to them about it. Let it go. Just let it go. You can't fix it. And they're going to tell lots of other people about what a jerk you are or how awful you are or whatever is their narrative. How do you defend against the null hypothesis? You can't, right?
Right.
So, and how do you defend yourself that you're a good person without putting someone else down? Well, I'm sorry she feels that way. I'm sorry that that's what she thinks. So graciousness is a big part of feeling good about ourselves and wonder. Now I know we've gotten away from suicide. Do we need more suicide talk?
No.
I
love I see that the word that comes to mind with all these nuggets that you're sharing is resilience.
My silly nuggets.
and resiliency, you know, and I think that's that's what connects our messages. I think, you know,
It is.
you're dealing with a lot of the big bads, the heavies, right? And we're maybe a little bit more in the in between.
No, you're
Of
not. You're dealing with the big bads. They just don't give that name.
yeah,
Who joins a wonder society other than people who already want wonder or who need wonder?
right.
I don't think what you do is any different than what I do. There's
A
different
good
methods.
point. That's a good point.
And
Yeah.
I think that anyone who is enjoying life, you know, like The Clown of God, do you know that book? It's a who wrote it? DePaulo, Tommy DePaulo.
Oh yeah.
It's
Oh
a
yeah.
beautiful book,
Cover.
and it's the juggler, and he's got the colorful balls, and then the golden one, the sun in the heavens. And when he gets old, it drops, and he feels sad, and he goes back to home, and it's Christmas Eve, and he's juggling, and the sun in the heavens falls into the Christ child's the statue. Well, the child had looked all sad and grumpy, and you know, another monk comes into the mass or the church and says, "Sacrilege, sacrilege," you know, because some people don't break rules. I know that word because we should break rules, right? But then you look at the statue, and the statue that looked so sad of the Christ child suddenly looked happy with the golden sun in the heavens. Doing what we love and what we're good at is the blessing. We bless others by diving into our own weirdness, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody.
Right.
And even if people give us permission to hurt them, it doesn't mean that it's okay.
Yeah.
There's masochism and sadism. I don't believe it's okay to hurt people ever.
Right.
Not with our words, not with our deeds, not with anything. I don't.
Yeah.
And if you read alleged grown-up Facebook, a lot of people forget that meanness is forever, right?
Yeah, that is a true statement.
Yeah, and adultitis is about being so busy with wonder that we are joyful, generous, grateful, kind, loving, playful, you know, and our brains need new things, exciting things, surprising things, correct?
Yep.
And that's what makes for the antidote to unhappiness, whether it gets to the point of suicide or just a diminished sense of happiness. Some people live a life with diminished color, you know, all the colors of the rainbow, somehow they haven't claimed. And I think that we can claim them all. One of my friends is colorblind said, it's still good to say that. So because she claims the color she has, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And whatever works. So that's my thought. I'm sticking to it.
This is beautiful. I love your perspective, Margarita. And I just think it's such a gift to hear. I know you have such a deep treasure box of information. So thank you for sharing that and opening that box literally for us tonight.
Yes, I really appreciate some of the nuggets. Again, the idea of like reframing how you look at things. I think that's another thing that we share is that perspective of, you know, just changing the way you see just a little bit can change everything.
Absolutely. And I want to say one last thing. If there's someone in your life that is sad, anxious, depressed, maybe even suicidal, the main thing you can do is to love yourself and love them. Dive into a sense of looking at editing your life. What is keeping you from joy? Is it an old idea, a habit, a story that you tell? Take a look at how amazing you are. You were born the way you're supposed to be. And if you're annoying, dive into annoying, but in a way that is joyful and helpful to other people. Be weirdly you. If you are you and let someone else's sadness make you better and you tell them that, it increases their sense of meaning. But no one needs to be alone because people need meaningful connection. And if we have those people that we can count on, if we call at 2 a.m, can you come over? And they will. That's what we need to find. And we don't find that. I think they should all go to your Wonder and Whimsy Society. They should join your tribe because they will find that there, even if it's just virtual.
Yeah.
I think they will find that. So find that. And it's everywhere in the world. You just have to find it. You have to look for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's truly wonderful. Thank you for...
I have to say the chat, you can't see the chat right now, Margarita, but it's filled with amazing comments. So like Jody from Utah is saying, I seriously love your guest.
Mhm.
And Sharon said,
Jody, we love you too.
Sharon from California tells us, thank you, Margarita. Very inspirational. And it's just filled with people saying that kind of thing. So thank you so much for sharing your night with us and
Yep.
and sharing so generously with all of us
Anything
tonight.
you guys ever need. I love you guys. I love your mission. I think you're saving lives and keeping people from being boring grown-ups. And thank you.
Thank you, Margarita. You
We'll
take
see
care.
you
We'll
soon.
talk
God bless.
You
soon.
guys too. Be well.
All right. That was
Seriously,
awesome.
guys, right? I mean, she's just a gem. And so please check out her website. Was it Dr. Red Shoe?
drredshoe.com.
Yes.
Yes.
And she is just a gift. So I'm glad you guys enjoyed her.
I'm going to need to watch that over
I
again
know.
because there were
dense.
so many things she said that I'm like, oh, that's really good. Oh,
Right?
that's really good. That's really good. So
Yeah.
I hope that was valuable. It was a little, and to be honest, it was a little bit of a risk. I'm like, are we really going to talk about this? But it's something that's been on our heart lately. And
Yeah.
if we can have one person that has a different perspective or is able to help someone in their life that they know, then this was worth it. But
we don't talk about this very often, but both my family and Jason's family has mental health history. Who doesn't, right? I mean, we both have relationships on both sides of our family where mental health is a real challenge. So I know it's one of those things that people get uncomfortable talking about it, but the more we talk about it, the more we're able to be resilient. And like Margarita said, and don't be afraid of the anxiety and the depression, but use that as maybe a starting point for conversation.
jumping off point.
Yeah.
So.